back. We had to jump in here for another week of fantasy. We normally do the whole 5-minute thing. I said, forget the 5-minute thing because we got Thanksgiving Day football, boys. Now we
That's
got
right.
Bears. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance, but we got Thanksgiving Day football. First off, we're all thankful for football on that day. We appreciate you guys for all tuning in. Make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the page. We do this fantasy thing weekly, but if you want more fantasy content, make sure you rock with the boys over at the Fantasy Whispers. They do this thing daily. This is what they do. So, got to pick you guys' brain here on this. Let's jump straight into this. I'm gonna say something that I never thought that I would say in the football season this year, especially with how it's gone as a Bears fan. Andy Dalton is a must pick up in my book if you need a quarterback this week. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd use the word must pick up. There are some other quarterbacks I'd probably be excited about, but he does make the streaming radar this week because of Detroit, because of Thursday Night Football, because we saw this. I mean, we've seen in very limited action of Andy Dalton that he's able to toss the ball around, especially to the wide receivers, in a way that we haven't seen Nagy be able to scheme Fields to do. Mooney really hot right now in his own right, so that's a piece that he's going to have on the board. Marquise Goodwin got involved last week as well. So he's got some weapons to get it out to, but there are some other streaming options I like a little bit more. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a little bit safer of a streaming option this week, based on what he's put on tape over the last few weeks and where that offense is at, going up against a Minnesota team that's susceptible to the pass, and to high scores in a lot of ways. I also like Tyrod Taylor, I think, as a sneaky streamable option as well, who rushed for 2 scores last week.
He's so weird. He's so weird. I'm just like he's good, but not good.
Well, he's good in his own right. I guess he's okay in his own right, and he plays for a god awful team. So that's what's going to hamper him a little bit there. But I understand the allure of Dalton, and we talk about Thursday night thirst. Usually, we want to get action in that game. Well, now we've got it 3 times, and we're a little bit more hungry because it's Thanksgiving. So we're trying to get a little bit more action on that day.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, we always like watching our players on Thanksgiving. But I will. I'll tell you, and Pat, I love you. I love coming on your show and talking sports here. And I know you're a Chicago-based, and I'm a Chicago Bears fan in my heart, but this doesn't look to be a good game for the Bears as stat-wise. It seems to be a trap game metrically.
They're all trap games for us, though.
Right, that's fair point. Fair point. Yeah,
we're in a trap right now.
Yeah, that is a good point. That is good. David Monty should be good to go. Like, he should have a good game. But yeah, Detroit over the last 4 weeks, surprisingly, are allowing just the bottom 4. They're bottom 4 in points allowed to the quarterback position. So they're actually tightening up, as well as at the wide receiver end as well. They're not allowing quite as many fancy points to the wide receiver either over that span. So they're kind of getting it together.
Now, here's the caveat to the reason I say it, right? And I don't know if you guys have heard this news, if you've been paying attention to the football waves that have been spread through this whole town today. It's been wavy today, boys. It's been tough out here for us, or exciting, depending on which side of the fence you're on. But I think that if you come into a week where Matt Nagy knows, allegedly, he might be getting fired, isn't it now the air raid offense that we've been asking for? Just throw it. I think you're gonna get a lot of like, oh, you guys think I can't do this? You guys think I can't? Andy, I'm taking back the play calling. We're airing it out.
I could see that. I was actually making the opposite argument that I think because his seat, and I agree with you, I think his seat is the hottest it's ever been, right? Where they're chanting "Fire Matt Nagy" at his kids' football game.
Like, that's where we're at, by the way, a little far.
Yeah, like
That's
far, right?
But Pat was in the audience cheering him on.
Yeah, he started the chant and then bailed.
I was at the UC doing it. Basketball game, free game. Kids football game, I'll give you a little leeway at the kids football game.
But I will say this, I think because of that, we could actually see, and the way to attack Detroit, we've seen it remains on the ground. They're still one of the most susceptible rush defenses in the NFL. And so I think that we're actually going to see a big David Montgomery game, control the clock. There's no way Matt Nagy wants to drop this game on national TV on Thanksgiving to the winless Lions, and then I shouldn't. Yeah, they are winless, but they
are
tied.
winless.
Yeah, but to the winless Lions, and then lose his job the next day. So
Yeah.
does he save his job with a win?
Hey,
I mean,
you
that
guys
sounds sad.
need to you guys
No,
need to
he
go
doesn't.
rewatch. You guys need to rewatch the film White Men Can't Jump, because clearly you missed a really important line in there. You know, sometimes when you tie, you really win, and that was the motto that Detroit was going with. You know, but sometimes when you win, you really lose.
You can believe that, but they're still the only team that is in the 17
has a 0.
Yes,
has a 0 in the W.
Yeah, they can still go 0-16. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty.
Yeah, imagine the Bears losing to them. That's not gonna
so
be
I know we're doing fantasy here, but I just got to ask you, Pat, are you, as a Bears fan right now, are you kind of hoping that you guys lose to Detroit so that way Matt Nagy does get fired? Or are you like, I want us to win because they're my Bears and we could still, cross our fingers and hope some things happen?
So I never want the Bears to lose. I'm not that fan that can root for a tank. Now I will say, that's not true. I can't say that. It depends on where you're at. The problem with a tank this year is Ryan Pace is our GM, so he doesn't value first round picks very much. So we don't have any of them. So tanking does nothing for you. Now, when the Bulls were bad, I was chanting tank 4 quarters for Michael Porter, but that doesn't seem to be working out now. I guess we might have actually come out into that. I don't know. But the thing with this is, the report that's out there is that no matter what the outcome is Thursday, Nagy will not have his job on Friday. And that's now whether it's true or not, you get a lot of reports like that, but that is from a Pulitzer award-winning reporter. I would assume, or at least hope, that he vetted his sources very well before he put this story out there. But in the age of 2021, we've seen that doesn't always happen. So to me, when I'm looking at it from a fantasy aspect, I think that this is a game where, like you, especially Monty, that Nagy's the guy that drafted him, the guy that believed in him, gave him his shot. You're probably going to see him run the hardest you've ever seen him run. I think Andy Dalton gets some benefit because of that. So for me, I look at Dalton as a nice pickup guy. I think that Mooney's going to benefit from that. I don't think you'll see any of those other big name guys out there, though, because they're on the other side of, like, we're ready to get Nagy out of here. You know? When you guys look at that game, man, I mean, it's the battle of the backups, but the Bears are coming out with a starter as their backup.
It does look like Jared Goff might give it a go based on what they were saying today. Like they think he's trending towards playing, but maybe a hobbled Goff, or maybe Goff belongs in the backup category. That's another show.
Yeah, I don't know if it really matters.
This game's line continues to go down and down. Yeah. It opened at 45 as an over-under. It's now down to 41.5 in most books. So they continue to think that this game is going to be one of those clunkers. And I would tend to agree with that as well, which is, again, why the reason I'm not really, outside of a Dave Montgomery, a flex start for Darnell Mooney if you need it. And then obviously Swift and Hawkinson on the other side are my key players. Yeah.
Any love for Swift and Hawkinson if well, of course Swift, but any love for Hawkinson if you don't have Jared, I mean, like you said, either way. But if you don't have Jared Goff out there and you do have to roll in with the battle of the backups.
Yeah, most of us are playing in some sort of PPR format, right? And in PPR, TJ Hawkins is a tight end 5. He's the top tight end. So, yeah, I know he had the bad week against Pittsburgh in week 10. He regained some composure here. 8 targets, 6 catches for 51 yards last week. I think he can continue to get home against Chicago as basically the one pass catching option for Detroit, outside of, DeAndre Swift when they use him in the passing game as well.
13.1 points, fantasy points surrendered on average per game over the last 4 weeks. The Bears defense, that is. So, Hawkinson should be good to go this week.
Who's the guy on our Thursday night football slate where, I mean, listen, we don't often get where you can win or lose a fantasy matchup on a Thursday night. You really only get that on Thanksgiving. Who's that guy that you guys are looking at right now to say, if you are going to go get somebody off these teams, off of the waiver wire pickups, go grab this guy?
I mean, if you want I've gone back and forth on this, Johnny and Pat. I was really looking at Cedric Wilson coming into this week, right? Because we're going to have Amari Cooper out with COVID. We're going to have CeeDee Lamb probably concussed and out of the game, which means Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz, and now Cedric Wilson will probably play his most snaps of the year on the outside. The problem is that's the Raiders' strength, funnily enough, on defense, is their cornerbacks. So I actually think this will be a big Dalton Schultz and Zeke game for the Cowboys. And so maybe it's more about the deals you don't make, you know? Maybe it's more about like maybe avoid a Cedric Wilson this week because I think Vegas is going to be in store for look, Dallas is probably in store to score the most points on the week, or at least that's what the Desert thinks. Yeah. And I think against Vegas' 7-point favorites, it's going to be a lot of Zeke and Pollard in this matchup.
And then I'll hit you one with the opposite, Pat, of like a guy that you probably would think about starting, but you should veer away from, and that's Dawson Knox, tight end for the Bills. Yeah, that if you start him, I'm telling you, you'll be hit with that turkey. What's that ingredient in the turkey?
Tryptophan.
Tryptophan.
Oh, tryptophan. Okay.
Yeah, you'll be wanting more of that because you'll want to forget about starting Knox if you do, because New Orleans over the last 4 weeks has just been dominant. And they've been all season long relative. They have only given up 1 touchdown so far to opposing tight ends. They've allowed the second fewest yards to opposing tight ends. And then you just look at Dawson Knox when he does not score a touchdown. He's getting, even in PPR, he's getting 8 or fewer fantasy points in those. And so he's getting around 40 yards receiving. And so you don't like him starting on Thursday night.
You'd really bench him or just temper expectations? Yes. I don't think you're benching.
I'd bench him. I played Dan Arnold over him. I'm playing Dan Arnold over him. And Dan Arnold got he didn't. He got a fat 0, and I'm playing Dan Arnold this week over Dawson.
I wouldn't agree with you all the same there, but I understand the concern. I mean, New Orleans is a tough defense, but they did just allow Dallas Goedert to get home a little bit against them there. 5 catches, got over double-digit points in PPR. So I actually think there's room for Knox here. I wouldn't go benching him for the lax. Look, Knox was on his way to being a top 5 tight end before the injuries. Come back, he's warmed up. I think he's back in this offense as the number 2 option.
Boys, I got to ask you, listen, and I came into this week and a couple questions tied up into this one, honestly. I came into this week and I looked at how god-awful the Bills were against the run. And I said, well, there's no way that I'm going to be able to play Carson Wentz this week because he's probably not going to throw a ball. So with the emergence of Jonathan Taylor, is Carson Wentz still a viable fantasy quarterback option, or do you need to start looking elsewhere? And in my case, I went Cam Newton this week. Is that a solid option moving forward? Because, listen, a lot of people are still leaving Cam out there, even though he just had the big game, of course, versus a subpar team. But he's going up against Miami this week. You could get another one of those games in this week.
Yeah, Miami is a top 10 option, or I think it's top 6 in points allowed to the quarterback right now. Even though we thought they were kind of turning a corner, Flacco got home against them a little bit last week, touched him up. And I think that Cam Newton is the right play over a Carson Wentz. This was an aggravating. We were doing our matchup show notes before coming on here. We'll have that up on the podcast. And this was an aggravating one to look at was Wentz because he's shown us his floor over the last 2 weeks. And that pendulum has really swung to the Jonathan Taylor side as far as touchdowns scored on that team. 5 of them last week. We all saw that. Hopefully none of y'all had to play against that. But with Wentz, there's just not a lot of upside with Jonathan Taylor being the guy he does. I will say this is the way to attack Tampa Bay, even though I don't know if the Colts care because they have the best running back in the game right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would be okay playing him in this game because you do look at how you attack Tampa Bay, and it isn't up the gut. Now, Jonathan Taylor, you're still going to start him. He's the number 1 running back. He will get dump offs, and I think that's what you're going to see. You'll also see Nahim Hines. So similar to a few weeks ago, right, when Carson Wentz was playing on a Thursday night, he was getting a lot of dump offs and whatnot to his running backs. And I think you're going to see a lot of the similar thing, game plan, because that's how you get to Tampa Bay. You attack them on the outside of that line as opposed to right up the gut there.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's now fallen, though, to the bottom half. Remember earlier this year, we were targeting our quarterbacks against them. They're now bottom half in points allowed. So they've kind of adjusted. They've tightened up a little bit on defense. They've also played some lower tier quarterbacks. We're talking about Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke. So that's a little bit of perspective there as well. But I do think I think in that particular instance, though, I don't mind the Wentz stream over, some of the guys we talked about before. I'd take him over Andy Dalton. I'd take him over Jimmy G. I'd take him over some of those fringe guys we talked about, Tyrod Taylor, Tua. But that's the line for me. I would take Cam Newton over Wentz this week. I do like Cam Newton in a good spot. So
yeah.
I mean, he performed well again. Is Cam going to be one of those guys the rest of this season? If he's playing a down team, yes, play him, because he's still Cam freaking Newton, and he's back. He's back, but. Right. If he's against the tougher defense, maybe you want to sit him down. A defense that's going to be able to make him pass more than he's able to use his legs, stuff like that. Like, is he a stream kind of player, kind of like Wentz has become at the end of the season?
He's for sure a stream. Johnny, I'll let you hop in. Sorry, I just wanted to point out, I think he's one of those guys that's going to get us to the playoffs potentially. He does have a bye mixed in there, but he's got Atlanta, he's got Miami this week. But then when he gets to the playoff, boys, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, I'd go ahead and sit Cam Newton for those 3 games. I don't know if I'm trusting Cam Newton in those 3 matchups. So I think let him get you there. Hopefully match him up with another streamer with a potential nice schedule down the stretch in the playoffs, and that's where I'd be at with it. But Johnny, do you think that you could trust Cam going forward, or do you think it's more like a couple games here and there?
Here's what's going to be nice is you are going to be able to see over the next few weeks if this is for reals. Like Cam looked the best that he's looked in the last 2 years. If this is for real and this is the Cam Newton that we're going to get, because this was the Cam Newton that we got when he originally left Carolina.
Yeah.
What's interesting is you kind of saw that when he went to New England. Now, this could have been a New England. Now, he did play very well in those first 2 games with New England, and then he got COVID, and then he wasn't quite the same. But if you look at him, how he played in New England, it was almost like they took Cam Newton and we're like, okay, we're gonna make you into a Tom Brady form of Cam Newton, and that's not how you make him the most. That's not how you get the most out of Cam Newton. Yeah. So what I am interested in is, we have seen Cam Newton is a top 5, top 8 quarterback when he is healthy and when he was playing for Carolina. I know, again, it was 2 years ago, but what we saw this past weekend was very similar to what we saw back when he was in Carolina, and he's only going to get to know this playbook more and more, which only bodes well for him as far as passing wise. He looked pretty accurate. So I do think there is now it will be an outside shot. I'm not saying he's going to be, top 5 rest of the season, but I do think there is, for sure over this next course to get you to the playoffs. But if he, because of his rushing upside, guys, I do think that there is potential rest of season that he is a top 12, top 10 fantasy quarterback, on that back end there.
Johnny, giving you the political answers here.
Hey, man, I'm not gonna lie. Listen, I love Cam. Listen,
there's a shot. I mean, I'm
down for a good hat always.
I'm just saying, because rushing
last 3 games of the years, I wouldn't be wanting to start him in my fantasy playoffs against the defenses we mentioned there. All of those defense get pressure at a really nice rate. A couple of them really good secondaries in Buffalo and in New Orleans. So for me, it was a very patented Cam Newton line. He failed to throw for over 200 yards. He got a couple touchdowns and he rushed one in. Yeah. So it's a very Cam Newton line. I think that's about where his ceiling is for the rest of the season. And we're going to see some down games for sure. But again, this week I like rolling in the fire with him because the odds are against Miami, he's going to get plenty of opportunities.
Now, you brought up the defenses there. What the hell has happened to Buffalo's defense, boys? And this is somebody that has Buffalo's defense, but I actually picked up Tennessee's defense, and they were the better of the 2 options, getting me 0 points. So I played them this week. That works out. But what is going on with 2 defenses that we at Buffalo's, we saw them dominating most of the season and then a hard drop off. And then on the flip side, Tennessee as well, we saw them have a couple of weeks of dominance and then they really dropped off hard. What's going on with these defenses late in the year?
Well, I think it's a number of things. One, I think Buffalo got lulled to sleep by their matchups. They played Miami, the Jets, and Jacksonville back to back to back, and then went and fought up against a really tough team in Indianapolis who could establish at the line of scrimmage. I mean, look at even in the Jacksonville game when they had a team that could get establish the line of scrimmage and establish at the line, they got beat up a little bit. So Buffalo, because they lack a running game, are getting beat up in some games and giving the ball back to the defense or to the other offense quite a bit and not sustaining drives. So I think that's getting in the way. Again, they're going to be facing a New Orleans team, lower over under, pretty heavy favorite, 6.5 in that game. It is in New Orleans, but I do think Buffalo's defense gets right. They haven't really, that was a tough game. It's tough to stomach, but I don't want us to be, creatures of the moment with Buffalo. I still think the defense is very sound. I think they got punched in the mouth, and they're going to come out pretty strong on this Thursday game. We see defenses tend to be favored if they're really good in these Thursday games. So I like Buffalo. As Tennessee, I don't know. I'd let Johnny kind of answer that, but they're a mess as far as injuries on the offense, which could lead to a lot of that defensive struggle.
Yeah, that's why. We try to look at updated, right? Because there are injuries and whatnot that happen, and things change, and so it significantly impacts. On the defensive side, on the offensive side, we could tell you, hey, pick up this player, and usually they're a fair, spot start or whatnot. But on defense, those injuries really do end up hurting defenses and can affect them as far as matchups go. So just injuries and to Travis's point, the Bills have a much easier schedule running coming forward with some of the quarterbacks that they'll start facing as far as on the offensive side. So
and it's
their
like
defense should be better.
If we're juxtaposing the two, right, guys, it's like we were kind of thinking that Tennessee was a fraud anyways. Even in those spiked defensive moments, we were like, hey, wait a second, why are they so good on defense? Whereas if we look at Buffalo, like we can excuse the one blip on the radar with Buffalo against Indy because one, Indy may have, again, one of the best lines with one of the best running backs in the game. And, Buffalo is a team with a lot of talent that should get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Any love on you guys' part for what we saw out of MVS for I guess, like, at this point, you're trying to you're in week 12, you're trying to kind of find those guys that you can bolster your lineup with. You saw A-Rod kind of find him a little bit more. He ends up being able to respond to the big Justin Jefferson touchdown with a touchdown of his own. Any love for
really wishing that was a longer drive now.
Yeah,
that was great. You would stretch that one out at that point.
At that point, you're like, oh, I wish you would have gotten tackled.
But with your Packers love here, man, you got any love for MVS moving forward with knowing his up and down nature?
Yeah, so I might be the wrong person to ask because every time he shows signs of life, I want to say, you know what, screw that. I once said before Josh Allen was really good, I called MVS the Josh Allen of wide receivers because you'd have amazing games where you'd look at him and be like, oh my God, that's great. And then you'd be like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like he would just drop so many passes. But, he had his career day against the Vikings, his longest touchdown of his career. Yep. You like to see that. You like to see the hamstring fully behind him. He's a speed guy, and he was on the IR with the hamstring. That's back. But the problem I have with these Packers are not the same Packers last year where we were scoring at an incredible rate. We were very highly efficient. We were scoring a ton in the red zone and passing it all over the place. We do what we need to do to win games this year. And if that means running it down your throat, we'll do that as well. Now, I will say this. The reason MVS was my number one wide receiver in my waiver column this week was because they have matchups against the Rams this week, Baltimore down the schedule, and then also the Minnesota Vikings again. So that's at least 3 games out of the next few weeks where we're looking at MVS in a potential shootout game or a game where Green Bay will need to be forced to throw. So that's why I think MVS becomes interesting. Now, again, like most wide receivers, it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole situation where we're going to be chasing points. But I do think MVS is an exciting, potential breakout down the stretch only because secondary option, Aaron Jones out of the lineup. That's targets out of the lineup as well. And then obviously Robert Tonyan not in the lineup anymore as well. So MVS has some upside for sure.
That one hurt a little bit for you, didn't it? You the Tonyan's your guy. Tonyan's like every Packer fan's like, nah, that's my guy, man. It's like that's
Yeah.
like
Well, we
like
just love when we draft and develop and one guy comes through and shows some big flashes. And so
Yeah.
last year, not only were the Packer fans drunk with it, but LaFleur was saying he was the most improved player he had seen since he got there. So that was like all the hype this year, but he was very touchdown dependent. We kind of knew that was possibility this year, and then unfortunately tore the ACL there. You feel for him.
Moving forward, as I mean, listen, I thought Flacco died on Sunday. I was pretty sure that I'll give him credit for this. He can get up. He can still take a shot, and he can still get up.
I used to wonder why he thought he was elite, and now I don't, because every time he gets hit, I think he just has CTE. So he just thinks he's elite. And so he's just been hit so many times and gets up. Like I don't know.
That's still what, to me, I'm like, Flacco should be what every team looks at when they say, hey, should we sign this guy that had a great run? Or had a great 4 or 5 games, and should we sign
him and Matt Flynn?
Dude.
Oh my God.
Oh,
it's just like bad. But I'll say this, a beneficiary that is still out there in most leagues, only picked up in 20% of leagues, and maybe somebody you might want to look at who's been benefiting from pretty much all of the backups that have been put in there. Jameson Crowder has had himself another nice day, another solid piece. Not somebody that I want to go in and say, hey, this is your number one. If you don't have anybody better and you're looking on the waiver wires trying to just bolster out your lineup, getting ready for the playoffs, is Jameson Crowder a pickup for you?
I'd rather have Elijah Moore or Corey Davis is
so would 76% of everybody else.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I know. But I'm just saying, like, you're asking me, to be honest with you, I'm not super interested. He's got a low floor, and a relatively lower ceiling for me. If you're in a deep league and PPR, then there's some nice. It's like a Jamal Agnew. If you lost Jamal Agnew, boy, pour one out for him.
Let me help Johnny out here. It's like having Hunter Renfrow on the Jets, right, Johnny? Like that's what we're looking at, right?
Bro,
like it's kind of like a floor play on the Jets, right? That's what he is.
Oh, come on. You think Renfrow is a
now you
play?
like Crowder? I was just trying to help you
No,
make a guess
I don't like Crowder, but I don't mind Renfrow if Renfrow's a nice piece.
But if you put Renfrow on
you just stressed his name like that, dude.
That's what I'm saying.
I can't believe it. So here's the deal. The Jets don't pass enough, right? Or pass enough. There's not a lot of super juicy pass volume in that offense, and they're not going to be in the scoring position a whole lot to where you are like, yeah, I'd love to throw Crowder in there. But again, it's very similar to Jamal Agnew, where he's going to be a somewhat safer floor, but your ceiling's a little bit lower, or it's not there. And then you just build your roster around that, knowing that you're just going to get a solid piece. But yeah, Elijah Moore and Corey Davis in that order would be the first two options that I want for that offense.
Absolutely.
Zach Wilson set to start this week. I just wonder how much.
Oh, well, never mind. Drop everybody.
Yeah, I feel like I feel so bad for any potential upstarts here. I wonder if this is going to screw over our Elijah Moore shares.
Well, he had a thing with Elijah Moore in the preseason, right?
And then in regular season, it was all Corey Davis. So I wonder, what we're going to get.
He wasn't on the field a whole lot. That's the other thing. Elijah Moore's snap share jumped up to 80%. It was the second time in 2 out of 3 games.
You guys can't see this, but in the private chat, Pat is telling us, hey, stop with the Jets talk. We got to get out of here. We're talking about the Jets too long.
Yeah.
Listen, if I want to hear about the Jets, I'll listen to Greenberg at noon on Chicago.
Yeah, there you go.
For some reason. No, that was funny. You brought up Hunter Renfrow. It made me think of my guy. He's a Raiders fan. He just loves Renfrow. And I'm just like, dude, what do you see in him? He's like, dude, I'm a 5'10" white guy. He's a 5'10" white guy. We don't got many athletes left. That's all I got.
That's all. That's good.
Yeah,
that's
he's
good.
The dad bod of the year is Hunter Renfrow, man.
Hey, he just scores tutties.
As far as trying to like I said, week 12, you're trying to get some depth. You're trying to find some pieces, maybe fill in a couple of guys on the bye. As far as trying to get in on the tight end position right now. Any love for an Evan Ingram? Any love for an Evan Ingram? I know that over on it's one of those give and take. Like but to me, like I look at him and I'm just like he's got all the intangibles. He's got nothing but opportunity. Maybe he's gonna have that game that he does break off for you that you can throw him in there.
Yeah, he's frustrating right before the bye. 3 straight games of double-digit PPR fantasy points. And then, of course, last night, different story. They had offensive linemen catching red zone touchdowns for the Giants. So for me,
especially
Evan
with the
Ingram
Eagles up next too.
Yeah, Evan Ingram is a decent spot start, and I think you could do worse. And I think, honestly, you make a good point here, Pat. I think if he's available, you'd go ahead and want him over some of the guys that are, because right now we're talking, in my waiver wire column, because of ownership percentage, I only write about guys that are under 50% in sleeper leagues, which put, Austin Hooper and Ryan Griffin of the man. We just love to talk about the Jets as our potential streaming options at the tight end position. That's how ugly it is right now at tight end. And so, if Evan Ingram, who's athletic, who is now going to have the tight ends coach Freddie Kitchens calling plays for the New York Giants, so there could be a little bit of an alignment there. Yeah, I think you could do a lot worse than Evan Ingram, but Dan Arnold, who Johnny mentioned, I think is a little bit safer, even though he got a 0 last week. I think that without Agnew and with the target share that he was seeing before last week, we got to positive regression for Dan Arnold.
It's Dan Arnold's such a weird one too to me. Like what's I look at him and I'm just like, you should be the guy. What the heck is going on with Dan Arnold?
Yeah, last week was a weird one, but like I said before that, he had been getting a lot of these targets. Yes. They traded for him. I think with Agnew out of the picture, but I think we're seeing a little bit even more. Like we were already seeing a rookie wall out of Trevor Lawrence, but this team has continued to be very go in the wrong direction. And obviously we knew that was possible with the Jags, but
the best one, and again, he is slightly over 50% rostered, but Pat Friarmuth, Big Travie, shout out to him. He was spotting this a couple weeks ago. Pat Friarmuth going against the Chargers this weekend. Great matchup against. They're giving up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, and Ebron officially out for season. It was announced today, so thumbs up for the Muth. The Muth will be loose. Or should I say the Muth will be loose. That's what I should go with.
I will say this.
That was a bad one. That was a bad. Was that
I'm
a dad
try
joke?
And get us past that.
Dad joke?
I'm gonna try and get us past that.
That was pretty good, dude.
Friarmuth.
Let's go back to talking about the Jets.
Yeah.
Hey, exactly.
I think with Friarmuth and with these guys like Dan Arnold, and we look at, we're always getting complaints about the tight end because that's what the tight end is, man. Yeah. We're complaining about TJ Hawkinson at the top of this show. I mean, shoot, we get questions about Hawkinson every week. The dude's the number 5 tight end in PPR. So again, the position is bad. It's volatile. You're going to have bad weeks, a la the Dan Arnold 0 points last week, but then he's going to be in spots where he runs a lot of routes, typically is targeted on a lot of his routes, and that's what we look for at tight end position. And to Johnny's point, if you get some of these guys around 50% owned, like Friarmuth, guys that you can look to stream, I think those are the guys you want to target because, look, with Juju out of the lineup, Friarmuth really dominated those dink and dunk passes from Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, and it's also something to take note of for in the future, right? Because realize that, hey, this is what the landscape is for tight ends, and then if you don't like doing that and you're like, oh, I'm better off just streaming week from week, then know that going into next season when you're doing your draft. We always tell people
Pete Kid is flexing on you hard in these comments.
Oh yeah, Pete Kid, he's hey, listen. I'm going in the right direction on the fantasy tip. You know what I'm saying? I'm on a nice little 5-game win streak. You know what I'm saying? Like Steph and AD being 6 and 5 is bad because I think they were 6 and 1, both of them at one point.
Oh, so you guys are going opposite directions.
Oh yeah, you know what I'm saying? Hey, listen, my team was just injured, and once they started getting back healthy, made a couple of trades, I'm moving in the right direction. Now
I got your boy CMC back, right?
So I got CMC back. I ran a nice little 3 running back system this week. Had Connor, CMC. And
that's right. Yeah. So you
Mixon,
have
you know what I'm saying?
potential league winner James Conner, because James Conner is absolutely balling for people.
You feel me? So hey, listen, I'm here for now. Unfortunately, the only thing that can slow him down this week, it might put an end to my my
Is the
streak
bye.
bye week for him. You know, I lose him and AJ Green. Those are two big, a lot of points in my lineup, but we'll get through it. You know, we're on to the Jets.
Onto the Jets.
I will ask you this though, because the tight end position, like you said, it is a weird one. It's one of those where it will make you pull your hair out every single season. Every single season. And Kyle Pitts has been that guy in a lot of people's leagues, because you see him go off for 20, and I think he went off for 20 multiple weeks in a row, had a week at 15 there, and then you see him get a 3 a week after that, and then last week you see him put up a solid what did he get, 6 points last week? Not a bad day. 6 points versus New England. Is he a must start on your team every single week? Or are you kind of starting to back off? I know Johnny's big on him. That's his guy. Are you kind of starting to back off on him a little bit as a starting tight end? Maybe go look at one of those guys over in New England if you have to.
I'm playing him, Pat, because of what you just said. You look and what we've been talking about, right? How the tight end position is very unpredictable. Yeah. So we talked about what Kyle Pitts' ceiling is. Yeah. His ceiling is better than most tight ends in this league. And so it's like it comes with the position. Again, if this was a different, a running back position or a wide receiver position, I think we would be, we'd have a different type of answer. But again, because it's the tight end position and it's very difficult to have a tight end unless it's Travis Kelce, basically. Yeah. And even he gave you a week where he dropped the ball as well. And so this is just what it is. You take the good with the bad at the tight end position. What you do in the future, and it might be too late now, but is when you have a guy that is talented like this, like a Hawkinson or, like a Darren Waller that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, where their production is down, but you're like, wait, the guy, like, I know he's a good fantasy player. He's been very productive and something's not adding up here. That he's due for most likely a bounce back or a regression. So then you want to go and, buy the dip. That's, you go and do that and go try to trade for him. And hopefully if you did that with Waller, then you got, what looks to be a great tight end moving forward. But this is just how that tight end position is. And for Pitts, especially who is running routes all over. I mean, even it was interesting. I don't know if you caught it, but Bill Belichick, he was interviewed and asked about Kyle Pitts before the game. And he's like, oh, yeah, I heard a lot of, people talking him up, during the draft, saying he's this game-changing player. He's like, I watched the tape, and you know what? It's true. He's really good. And guess what? And guess what you saw and then everyone knew once he said that, you're like, oh, well, you don't test Bill Belichick, because if he thinks you're his best player, then he's going to shut you down. And that's what happened. Kyle Pitts was shut down.
I think Pitts is exactly where he was at last week. An insane buy low opportunity, guys. Like this guy is top 5 in so many categories. He's number 1 in air yard share, 3 in receiving yardage, 3 in deep targets from the tight end position, and he's only scored 1 time. That pendulum has to swing the other way. That's just math. I mean, he's going to have a big second half of the year, and I think that's all coming down the stretch. So I understand, like, kid saying he sucks. People are burned because you've drafted him high. You drafted him as the 4th tight end, or maybe you acquired him because you liked his talent. This happens with tight ends. It takes a little bit for them to learn the position, to figure out the blocking and the releasing and all of that stuff that goes with the position. But these are the metrics we want. We want him to be involved in the offense, get deep targets, get red zone targets. He just hasn't scored yet as much, guys. And I think he does. I mean, look at last year when we saw guys that were struggling. These will all be running backs, but I look at Jonathan Taylor was struggling for the first part of last year, went off down the stretch. Dave Montgomery, Bears running back, was struggling for most of the year, went off down the stretch. This happens in fantasy. It's a long year. But as the matchups turn, the weather turns, offenses get a little bit more involved, I think Pitts is in for a big next 6-7 games.
Well, and that's why, because Pitts, like, of course, fantasy wise, we're just like, what numbers are you giving us? But in reality, he's a rookie trying to figure it out as he's going along. That's why I asked, is he a start every single week over a guy like P. Kid mentioned in Hunter Henry, who we've seen be a little more consistent, and especially linking up with Mac Jones there. Like, is he that must start?
We
guy?
have to look at the way they're consistent, though, Pat.
Yeah.
Like Hunter Henry is consistent because he lives off touchdowns. What happens when he doesn't score a touchdown? 2
0
points,
2
one
points,
catch.
yeah.
Like that, I don't know. Touchdowns are volatile. Yes, when you're targeted in the red zone, we like that a lot, and Hunter Henry has been. But shouldn't it equate, like if we're looking at logic, as Mac Jones gets better, shouldn't more weapons become available to him because he's seeing the field a little bit better as he progresses, as this team gets better? So do I think Hunter Henry's a fine fill-in? Yeah, but I don't think he's an auto start over Kyle Pitts, who again is running more routes than him, who is being targeted more than him, and is being used down the field as an electric weapon for that offense. And so for me, I think P-Kid mentioned Patterson. We're worried that Patterson might have a high ankle sprain, which would mean more targets for our guy Pitts down the stretch.
And who knows if Calvin Ridley comes back? We still don't even know that. So he could technically be the wide receiver 1 there for that. And here's the other thing on top of just to kind of hammer it home, Pat. Fantasy football, when you look at it from an opportunity standpoint, right? Yeah. Like you could see one guy like Travis said scoring these touchdowns, but you look at it and you're like, wait, he scored 2 touchdowns on 3 targets. You're like, okay, all right. He scored a lot of fantasy points, but okay, a lot of them are touchdowns. And then you're looking at Kyle Pitts, where Kyle Pitts is averaging 8 to 10 targets per game on the field for 90% of plays, running all routes. And you just look at your odds, like give me 10 of something or 8 of something over 3 with a chance of, maybe I have to cross my fingers on getting a touchdown in order to make my day, where at least with Kyle Pitts is like, he could get yardage. If he does get, the touchdown, you're building in that upside. That's why when you're doing your lineup, build it that way. Build in, hey, Kyle Pitts could probably most likely won't score a touchdown. I'm expecting between, 8 to 10 fantasy points from here. And then all of a sudden, if he goes off, he scores those 2 touchdowns in a game or 3 because he's due. And then all of a sudden you had all these fantasy points that were not accounted for. And then that's how you elevate your game.
Yeah, facts. Man, good points, man. Good points. Let's get to some of these questions that the people got, man. I think this is always my favorite part of the show. So if you do have a fantasy question, drop it in here now. We will get to breaking them down. Let's start it off with P-Kid, because this actually was going to be my last question to you guys. Started with a Bears topic, ended with a Bears topic. That's how I do. Would you stream Chicago's defense versus the Lions opposed to Green Bay versus LA? And I'm not high on. I can't say I'm not high on it. I'm not high on Chicago's defense winning the game, but Robert Quinn's having a career year. Robert Quinn's having a year that's on pace with one of the best pass rushers of all time right now. And we're only in week 12. He's got 6 weeks to go. He's got 10 sacks already, or 7, 6, math, what I'm saying. Don't worry about it. But he's already got 10 sacks right now. Would you play the Bears defense versus the Lions, knowing that Quinn can disrupt a lot of what that team wants to do?
Yeah, I love the Bears defense. I was scouting them ahead of this matchup this week, and then we'd love it even more if Tim Boyle got the start as well. So there's a lot of things. And then if Goff gets in and is hobbled, we like that too. There's just a lot of things. There's a holy trinity when it comes to streaming our defenses, okay? We want that defense to be in a low over-under. Check. We mark that off the box. Yep. We want them to be at home. Now, Detroit's at home, but are they really at home? Does anybody go to Lions games anymore? And then number 3, we want them to be favored, and the Chicago Bears are favored in this one by about 4 points in most sports books. I love this for this game. It's a low over-under. I think if the Bears do score, there's a likelihood it's on defense maybe because of the way Detroit has played the game. So, yeah, I don't think this is bad. And I'm saying this above my Packers, who have played good defense as of late. But I would say this: they're at home, yes, but they're going to face a Rams team rested off the bye. I don't want McVay off the bye against my Packers at home. It's a high over-under. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. So give me the defense on the other side here for Chicago for you, P-Kid.
Here's Kyle Ellis with the question. Drop Russell Wilson for David Johnson, Ty Johnson, or Tony Jones in PPR. I got Lamar as well, and it's an 8-man where we start 3 wide receivers and 3 running backs.
Go for it, Johnny.
I would do that.
I didn't want to be the one to say drop Russell Wilson, but it is an 8-man.
Yeah. I was like, at first I was like, no, I wouldn't be dropping Russell Wilson, but
then you got Lamar.
Yeah, but then he's got Lamar, and it's an 8-man, so like there's no use, and like you could pick up and stream if you need to, or if you ever needed to. So I would pick up Ty Johnson out of these three. Tony Jones is somewhat interesting. We don't know exactly. Ingram is dealing with some kind of injury or he missed practice today. And obviously Kamara not expected to play. The David Johnson is a little sneaky. It sounds disgusting, but he's a little sneaky with his matchup this week. And then ultimately I would go with Ty Johnson here, though.
I like how all of us were just like, I'm not gonna tell you to drop Russell Wilson,
right?
Like, I don't want to tell you that, especially this week because they play Washington. It should be but he's been really bad, and you have Lamar Jackson, so I don't know. In an 8-man league, I don't know that you need Russell Wilson.
In an 8-man league, you can probably get him back. You guys have probably been swapping out starting quarterbacks all year,
right?
Just for the heck of it.
I can't believe I just told you to start or drop Russell Wilson for Ty Johnson.
For Ty Johnson, that's going to get clipped out and played on. That's going to get played on a slander tape against us. You know? Fantasy whisperers are out here saying to drop Russell Wilson for Ty Johnson.
Somebody photoshops in 12 team instead of 8.
Like, exactly. Right? Yeah.
It was 18
or 18. Yeah. Like,
should I trade Diggs and Dillon, who's in my bench, for Justin Jefferson?
So I was looking at this, and I really wanted to say yes initially, but Diggs has turned it on lately, and he's climbed into the top 10 at the position, especially in PPR. I think I'm keeping Diggs and Dillon, who has some upside at least for one more week. So even if Dillon is on your bench, try and go to the Aaron Jones owner and trade him, A.J. Dillon, for some value.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be getting rid of Diggs because I think essentially by the end of the year, he's going to be giving you about the same as Justin Jefferson. And he's done that over the last few weeks.
And that's usually how he plays. Like when you look at his history,
it's not a surprise, right? Like it's not right.
He usually will come on at the end of the season. Even last year, you looked at like he finished top 5 in like 4 out of the last 5 games, and that's why he was able to elevate himself as the number 2 wide receiver overall. Before that, he was like wide receiver 18 or something like that. And then those last 4 games really elevated. So he has that upside. So I definitely wouldn't be trading Diggs right now.
Now, we got a hard prediction in here. I want to know how you guys feel about this. Says he thinks that Antonio Gibson will go off the rest of the season, saying that Rivera wants to get him more carries and is getting him more carries and using him in that quick pass game. Do you guys see that? Is Gibson somebody you might be going after?
Johnny, man, last week was cracking me up. He's right that we should have sold Gibson high, like based on the game against the Buccaneers where he had the 2 touchdowns used. But it's like some of the matchups down the stretch after this Carolina game that was tough are really good. But then you get into the playoffs and they get really bad again. So he is a mix of like a sell high, buy low situation at times. I think it's going to be too hard because he's not used in the passing game enough. They still use McKissick too much in the passing game for him to be the overall guy that's going to go off, to get him to the point of like a Jonathan Taylor last year or a Dave Montgomery last year. Plus we have the shin deal that we've been told by every sports doctor on Twitter, that's not going to get healed, right? That's only going to get worse. It doesn't get better. So I don't see how you see his arrow going up from here. I think it could stabilize and he could get consistent groundwork. But that's about it. He doesn't really have the ceiling we thought when we drafted him in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Good question here from Chris Geneva. Wondering if you guys could give some lineup advice for this week. Need 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, and 1 flex of the bunch. Mike Williams, Claypool, Gallup, Melvin Gordon, Miles Sanders, and Rattimore. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Ramondre. I read that all the way wrong. Ramondre Rattimore.
What good, brother. I'm playing Miles Sanders this week. Melvin Gordon. Would you play Melvin Gordon in this instance, Big Travie? I just love Miles Sanders' matchup this week and love the usage that we saw coming off. And then Jordan Howard, he got banged up, so he won't be in this game.
Yeah, it's funny because like Melvin Gordon and Ramondre look to be in very similar situations right now, sharing the ball with another back in an offense. So it's about who do I trust and which matchup do I trust a little bit more. It's hard. I'm going to go Gordon just because he's been better for longer this year. I think I can trust his usage in the red zone more than Ramondre because Damian Harris, before Ramondre came along and had the great game, Damian Harris was the goal line back. So that's a situation for me that I think that like Melvin Gordon, at least we know is the goal line back. I'd be starting him with Sanders there. So then we look at the wide receivers. I think we're starting Mike Williams, and then it's between Claypool and Gallup. And give me Gallup on Thursday. With the extended usage here, I think out of him because Cooper's out, and we have CeeDee Lamb concussed as well. So I think Gallup's the safest play out of those two. Claypool, look, Claypool was my man crush coming into the year, dude. I wanted Claypool to be good so bad, but Ben just does not have it, and you need to be able to put it down the field on Claypool, and he just can't do it right now.
Yeah, Ben's so bad. Like Claypool to me is one of those. Claypool is like talent-wise a level of Justin Jefferson. And you don't get to see it at all because the quarterback trying to throw him the ball. It's just
well, I'll tell you what, if they were to ever, I mean, I'm glad they didn't do it. But if they were ever to use Claypool in the Deontay role, he would be top 5 wide receiver. I'm telling you, because you're right. Like his talent, his body size would be so perfect. But they have Deontay in that role, and it's great for him.
So I think
Deontay, but yeah.
So then we didn't really answer it, did we? Because we still have the
let me throw it back up.
One flex. I'm sorry about that. I got ahead of myself. Wide receivers were Mike Williams and Gallup. So it's really between Claypool and Ramondre, Johnny, for the flex.
Wait, no, they need 1, 1, and 1. So you said Mike Williams, Gallup.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. My bad. Yeah, so we are starting the 2 running backs and then Mike Williams.
I would.
Yeah, that's who I would go with.
Right, I would.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify because I was off.
You all good. You all good. We got a question from the Twitterverse here. Need a defense for 1 week. 1 week. Do I take Houston versus the Jets? Philly versus the Giants? The fact that the question is just like, do I take anybody versus New York?
Yes.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, I will say both defenses last couple of weeks having better games. That Houston's been balling a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Do we want to say
their defense? Well, yeah. Their defense has been putting it together. But I'm going Eagles here. Give me the Eagles against the Giants.
Yeah, I would agree with that. New offensive coordinator, Daniel Jones, aka the walking turnover. Give me some Philly defense. Philly coming off a really strong performance, back-to-back strong performances for Philly against Denver and New Orleans.
Yeah,
Darius Slade, back-to-back touchdowns, 1 fumble, 6
6. Yeah,
and no love for Houston going up against Zach Wilson, who was a kind of a turnover machine going into his injury.
The best part of Zach Wilson's year so far as a rookie is when he said that he wanted to be more like Mike White. That's what he was quoted saying, that he wished his plays were more like Mike White, the understudy quarterback that replaced him.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe he was just talking about his swag, dude. Why? Or maybe he was talking about his height, because I'm pretty sure Mike White is like 6'4" or something. And that could be it. Yeah, that could be it.
I hope so, because if he wants to be like Mike White, it's the best part about that is, and here we are with Jets talk again. What the heck's going on? But
welcome to the Jets podcast, baby.
To the Jets talk podcast where we suck and we can't get over it.
Hey, maybe we'll get Gary V in here.
Let's do it, man. I'm here for it.
I'd be about that life.
He wants to own the team. I'd love Gary V to own the team, because Gary V's mentality would just be like, "Hey, you guys suck, so we're gonna get rid of everybody, but we love you, but we're gonna
be grateful."
Bro, Gary
V would be the Matt Nagy owner for the Jets.
Oh man,
I almost think you'd almost be like a Moneyball person with the Jets. Where you
he'd be picking up his quarterback at a yard sale for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and then he'd sell them 2 for $1 to the Bears. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Because Pace does love to overpay for his.
Oh yeah, for sure, man.
There we go.
Boys, appreciate you guys for pulling up and tuning in with us as always, man. Oh, see, here we go. You always get that. You get that last one in on me before I get out of here. I'll let you have it. Here we got one last question before we get out of here, boys. Fournette or Saquon for Chris Godwin?
This is interesting. We could have a hamstring lingering situation for Mike Evans. Obviously, the health of AB's been a concern the last few weeks. Godwin
Or if
been
he's just
soaking up a
taking
lot.
what's going on with the fake
The fake vax card.
fake
We can see
COVID
if
card? Is that
yeah.
facts?
No, dude, that
Federal offense.
he actually got it, dude. He got the vax.
Were you there? Yeah, you injected him, bro. You want to be on record?
Hey, I believe,
right?
Hey, I believe Tampa Bay, when they put out a statement saying that, hey, we checked all vax cards and none of them seem to be phony. I believe it.
I will say this. I do know for a fact that Tom Brady was like, I will tell you this at the beginning of the year. Go get the vaccine or you will be cut.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
like to everybody on the team. Like, we will not.
They were supposedly one of the only teams with a full vaccination. 100%. So, well, we'll see. And how many more of AB's cronies, in the locker room got some of his fake vax cards that he was pulling out of his trench coat? We don't know. We can see a bunch of things.
Wow,
but
dude.
no, to answer the question, Mr. Curly Wolf here, I want to say that I think right now, you'd have a little bit more faith in Fournette. Obviously, the offense is a little bit better, but I do think Saquon is the right one to keep here. So trade Fournette to get Godwin. I do like that. Keep Saquon on your team because he's the only one of these two that could be the focal point of his offense going down the stretch. I mean, that's especially we've seen this, guys, when they change offensive coordinators and coaching changes, they commit back to the run. I could see a lot of that happening in New York going forward.
Yeah.
As always, boys, we appreciate you guys for pulling up with us, man. You've given us some nuggets to go into the week. I mean, listen, it's going to be an interesting week. Thursday on Thanksgiving is always interesting because, like, waking up on Friday, like, oh, man, I've lost. Or like, oh, man, I just dominated these guys. Like, it's a weird feeling that early on in the week.
Well, especially definitely. There's a lot of invested players, man. We've got Buffalo, Dallas, and the Raiders, all some big, some big teams there to be invested in. So many players.
And just quick tip on the way out, Pat. It's also a good sense of being able to adjust your lineup. So if you have a guys that go off against you, right? Then on Sunday, hey, I need to go for more upside on my players or on my lineup, or vice versa. if they have guys that like all
Johnny says, if you go down big on Thanksgiving, you start Jameson Crowder because he's got some big upside.
That's exactly right, dude. That's exactly right.
And listen, hey kid, I see you with the 10-2. I do want to let this be known why he's being as cocky as he can, and I'm on a win streak so I can be a little cocky myself. That second loss, he lost to a guy that basically didn't realize one of his guys was on IR. And still played him. So kid lost down one with Pat Mahomes in the lineup as well. So bow back at you, kid.
Hey, do you play kid again this year?
I don't. I'm really upset. I played Ringo again and I beat Ringo. I played AD again and I beat AD. And so I'm kind of upset that I don't get a set. It's going to be playoffs. I'll see him in the playoffs. And but I got Antonio Brown, so we'll see if he's vaxxed or not by then. But boys, I appreciate y'all for pulling up and rocking with us as always, man. If you guys want to get your weekly fantasy advice, go check out the Fantasy Whispers over on the Fantasy Whispers YouTube page, and also get that weekly advice at thefantasywhispers.com. We appreciate everybody for tuning in and rocking with us. It's your boy Pat the Designer, joined by the boys Big Travie. And always, Johnny Game Time Hicks. Make sure to follow them on Twitter, man. At Big Travie TFW, at Johnny_Game Time. Y'all stay safe out there, world. Peace.